pharmacist that requires to prepare or extemporaneously prepare compounding products, this would be beneficial to you. Looking at the examples of the international scene, what they are doing, what's the procedures and policies that one would follow. So in this study here, we have published the study at the European Journal of Hospital Pharmacy, and we looked at the policies or the practices of compounding oral liquid dosage forms. And we do know that certain dosage form, like the injectable dosage form, they have a huge amount of data, stability data, which is available. However, the extemporaneously compounded liquid dosage forms are a little bit more scanty, and these are based on certain regulations that federal authorities have approved in certain areas. So the authors include myself and Dr. Zuhair Emara, also from Madinah Al-Monowarrah in Saudi Arabia, and Mr. Andy Gray from South Africa. And what we do know is that pharmacists, if a pharmacist requires to prepare a compounded medicine, he relies heavily on reference materials to compound these medications. Generally, a hospital pharmacist looks at the internet, he does a Google search and will come up with a formula or a master formula record, an MFR as we call it, and he will try to devise a recipe on how to prepare this compounded medication. So we can see that, that compounding of a medication for a child may be the only option. Okay, so in certain cases, we know that pediatric patients, they cannot consume tablets, so we need to prepare a liquid oral dosage form. Or certain adult geriatric patients, they cannot chew or cannot take tablets, so we do prepare a compounded preparation for them. So the question is the supported evidence. What is the quality of evidence that we encounter as pharmacists? The evidence of bioavailability by industry or other parties such as the academia. Extemporaneous compounding can be considered to be an integral part of the practice of pharmacy profession and to rely on the established professional acumen called secundum artem of its practitioners. So we as pharmacists, we have certain basic skills on how to compound extemporaneously certain preparations. The WHO Expert Committee on Specifications for Pharmaceutical Preparations have mentioned that compared with the use of authorized medicines, there are significant risks associated with compounding. Quality, safety, and efficacy can really all be assured, and many errors have been reported in the preparation of such medicines. So this is a WHO statement, and we can find that with the extemporaneously preparations, there are risks that are associated with this. So how can we as a pharmacist devise a specific guideline on how to prepare oral liquid dosage forms very safely? Okay, the key message of my presentation that the MFR, or the master formula record use, should be backed by a good quality evidence. So generally doing a Google search might not be the best way. We have found many problems with Google search, or many references with that being said. And as a basic guideline, as certain authorities like the USP 795 or certain regulatory authorities, they require that if you are going to prepare an oral liquid dosage form, if you're going to compound it in your pharmacy, you should have at least one stability study to back up your MFR, your formula, or your recipe. So there should be at least one stability study showing a retention of more than 90% of the initial drug concentration before assigning a beyond use date, or in some countries they might call it an expiration date. In many countries they call it a BUD, or beyond use date. So beyond use date should be judicially used. So we cannot just stick a BUD on any extemporaneous compounded preparation unless it's backed by a stability study, or there are certain guidelines like what is found in the USP 795 guidelines or the Saudi FDA guidance on compounding extemporaneous preparations. So there are certain regulatory authorities that approve, they do allow us small scale compounding regulations, but there are certain guidelines or there's certain guidance. For example, we cannot produce or we cannot extemporaneously compound an item which is commercially available and registered by the federal authority. So, for example, in Saudi Arabia, we cannot produce, if a company is already producing a specific drug, we cannot produce the same drug because there's certain rules and regulations. For example, GMP standards. There are certain regulatory, authorities, certain patency rules and regulations that we cannot violate. So it would be illegal for us to prepare a copy of a drug. There are certain exceptions to the rule, however, when the clinical needs of the patient are not met, or we need a medication in a different concentration. And we also know that in the pediatric population, the access to medication is quite limited. For the adult population, we have a lot of tablets, but in the pediatric population, the oral liquid dosage forms are quite inaccessible, especially in certain parts of the world. So the pediatric population, they are being the most vulnerable. So do we have reference material available? Yes, there are reference material available. For example, one could find TRISL, handbook on compounded medication. It's a very, very famous book. There are other resources available, but sadly we found quite a lot of errors in these books. So they are well described standards like USP 7995 has, they have an entire chapter that discusses such non-sterile compounding, but as we mentioned before, that the evidence is scanty. The evidence is based for even utilizing the USP 795 recommendation is a little bit, what can I say, dodgy, because certain medications, the USP, for example, would say an oral liquid dosage form in an aqueous medium has a 14-day BUD. However, we found that some medications still have a lower or a less BUD than the recommended USP. So there's certain guidance like Saudi FDA or USP guidance that can be utilized when giving BUDs. So in our study, we took 75 recipes or master formula records from 5 different hospitals in Saudi Arabia. Our study took us approximately 3 years. Each of the recipe or MFR we searched for was a peer-reviewed literature search, and we searched Medline, Google Scholar, US FDA packages. We also look at certain tertiary books like the TRISL book for compounded formulations. Our search term includes stability studies and extemporaneous. So we did not include any language limits, although only English language was considered. The data was compiled by a task force and reviewed by, we had a task force to review all of the data, and 2 pharmacists verified the data. And at the end of the day, the 75 formulas that we found was tabled in a similar pattern like this. This is just a sample of one of those. This was for amiodarone, and the different authors, we brought them together. For example, Nahata is one of the most famous authors in extemporaneous compounding. He has 3 different studies, whereas Alexander and his colleagues have 1 study. And we would note down the vehicle, the shelf lives, and we would obviously go for the longer shelf lives. And we would be looking for stability studies, for example, HPLC study. If an HPLC study was included, this would be considered as a good study. And our conclusions, and one of our limitations could be seen here. Sometimes in certain countries, you would find that not all ingredients are available. We found that 89% of the MFRs that we looked at, or the studies that we look at, or the MFRs, sorry, had at least 1 stability study. The remainder used BUDs, which is similar to the USP guidance. We found that there are 28 commercially available items which are registered products and which should not be compounded. We find 161 relevant publication, and 80% of the MFRs required revision and deleted. So 80% of the recipes or the compounded formulations that we have found, it needed revisions because we found errors, and some of these errors were quite serious. So these are some of the changes that we had to do. So after reviewing all of this, we made certain changes. So 33 or 44% of the formulas had to be revised. The ingredients had to be changed. Storage guidance, 34.7% had to be changed. The stability guidelines, 26.7% had to be changed. Calculations, we found 4 errors which we had to change. And the concentration, they were incorrect concentration, 2.7% of them. And we deleted 26.7% of the suggested formulations. So as part of a project, we developed this website. So this website is available. It's free of charge. You can see the link there. So if anyone who is working in hospital pharmacy or any pharmacy that does compounding, we have a free reference for you. So this website is still under still under evaluation, but it's available free of charge. Anybody can go into the website and look at the results, and you can find, if you're looking, for example, for amiloride or amiodarone suspension, you can click on this and you would find the formula, how to prepare it. You would find the beyond use dates, the stability data, and you'll also find the references that we used, the original study that had the stability design. So this is in the ResearchGate. So if you have access to ResearchGate, you can find a PDF form of our results. So we have quite a few formulas, oral liquid dosage forms that are available, which can be beneficial for your pediatric patients. And we found that, when do we as a pharmacist, when can we prepare an extemporaneous compounding? Firstly, number one, the item should not be registered commercially. It should not be an approved, registered, commercially available drug which is available, which has been registered by the federal authority, like US FDA or the Saudi FDA, and it should follow standards, which is there's a guidance of the USP 795. Sadly, many pharmacists are not aware of the 795 standards, and the Saudi FDA in our country, they have issued some guidance on small scale compounding, and obviously large scale compounding will not be allowed, because some people try to try to defeat the system by not registering their products with the regulatory authority, and claiming that we are trying to extemporaneously compound for a small population. However, they began large-scale compounding, and with large-scale compounding, we know that we need to follow certain GMP standards. Okay, so stability studies should show at least 90% of activity of the original drug, of the original active pharmaceutical ingredient. So when you're finding any stability study, make sure you find a good stability study with something like an HPLC design, with having 90% activity. And judicial use of BUDs. As I said, not all drugs you can use the BUD, although the USP guidance is quite good. However, some drugs we did find are very unstable. So you need to know the characteristic or the chemical characteristics of the drug in order for you to choose a vehicle when preparing such an item. And another limitation that we had was the availability of ingredients. In Saudi Arabia, it's not like in the US or in other countries where they have a huge range of freely available ingredients. We have certain limitations and certain customs, regulations, which it makes it difficult for us to get these stuff. So again, this was a limitation of our study. And another problem that we found was the risk of reliance of outdated references. So you would find on the internet, for example, you can go on the internet, look at Sick Kids Hospital, you can look, there's many resources that are available out there. However, have these been validated? We're not really sure. And we found quite a few errors in some of the very reputable organizations. Even in the Tristle Handbook, we found 14 errors in the book, and which we did also inform the authors, and they've changed it subsequently to that. So again, the types of references that you are using, we prefer to look for the original stability study, and if no stability study could be found, you could use the USP 795 guidance for assigning BUDs. However, you need to know the chemical characteristics of the drug that's going to be prepared. So our limitations is the references not using standard citation. So you'll find some of the hospitals, they did not follow the standard citation guidelines, which made it very difficult for us to try to trace the original studies, and we could not verify them, and we had to reject these formulations because of the poor citation standards that people used. Okay, and also not all references could be retrieved. However, when they could not be retrieved, we tried to back up this by the reputable tertiary books like the Tristle book on compounding medication. So our conclusion, we found that 80% of the formulas, the master formula formula records could not be relied upon. So we needed to change 80% of them. So just a random search in your community pharmacy or your hospital pharmacy, you might find a similar pattern. And we also found similar studies showing similar results in different parts of the world when they try to look at the standards that people use in compounding, in small scale compounding in hospital pharmacies. And 24% of the formulas we found we did not recommend for use because we found major errors in them. Stability studies existed for 90% of MFRs. So the products that we searched for, we did find stability studies with some of them with good design, like HPLC. 5 products were registered commercially, so it was prohibited. We should not have been compounding them because they are registered commercially. And it also requires ongoing maintenance of the manual. So this is something very important. Once any pharmacy and therapeutics committee does put into place a compounding manual, it needs ongoing maintenance. So thank you very much. And this is my email. If anyone have any more questions about our research and about formulations, you can email me at this email. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very important. You've highlighted a very important topic here. Anyone, if the presenter has shared their email address, if you have any questions, you can reach out to them. Thank you so much.